Surprise! This is the card that I opened the deck to. This is Intuitive Kev's Kipperish deck. And you're in for, I would say, a pleasant surprise. Let's just call it what it is. Positively off the top. Why don't we? But surprise can go many different ways. Yeah, so let's see what we got here. What's up, everybody? It's me, Danae. I'm here with a message for you. I already, at this point, should have posted my previous message, which was a pre-shuffle that ended up just being me channeling and sharing as I felt guided to. So I'm back with another one. I kind of intended to do two messages today anyway because I missed Monday. And it's my intention to try to do at least 4 or 5 a week. So usually I like to do 5. If I could come on every day of the week, that's my intention. But sometimes life just gets busy, y'all. I try. I really do. But anyway, this is me doubling up because I got some time today. And let's see what the cards have to say. This could be a continuation of the previous message, so tap in if you will. Or this could be something altogether fresh. Let's be surprised together, shall we? All right. Oh, by the way, today is Tuesday. Ooh, 2:11 on the clock, and it's May 26, 2026. Oh, okay, yes. Let's hear it for that quick little portal, that subtle little portal. Love spell, sheesh. Oh, boy. Love spell. What about a love spell? Somebody surprised that their spells are not working. That's what I get. Priest. Ooh. Ooh, I'm getting that you would be surprised who is doing love spells or hurling some type of projections. Some type of mystical projections. It would be somebody that you would least expect or that should be the last to be doing such things. Because love spells, I don't care. Like, love spells are one of those things, like, if you're not doing love spells with your partner, the two of you in consent and the agreement and alignment that you are binding yourselves to together, and even that is shaky. Even if you're married, it still is like, do you really want to do that? Because you just never quite know. But especially if you're not married or you're not in a partnership where you two are consenting partners to whatever you're cooking up, that is one of the most baneful and foolish practices that you can participate in, because love is such a precious power, so why would you ever assume to project any type of control or influence over someone using that type of frequency where it's uninvited and unsuspecting? That's like the ultimate violation, if you ask me. And speaking of violation, feels strong when I said that. Like, it's what's the right word? Not violation, but yeah, it is violation, but it's something more than that. Like, when you are, I can't think of the word, but it's gonna come to me, especially if this is what we own. So let's see. Oh, not the rich guy in reverse. Somebody's about to lose their position, their status, their money, like everything that they have achieved, maybe even their gifts, on account of some bullshit that they got going on. And it's not like he looking at his watch. It's only a matter of time if it hasn't happened already. Where somebody's about to be surprised that one day they go to do some stupid shit, and they might either be surprised by Or that maybe they are surprised, as I said, about how it's not working when usually it does like clockwork. Or perhaps surprised by how it backfires. And it could even be by way of all the losses that they're about to incur. And somebody might not even be able to really connect the dots. That's what I'm getting to, because I keep looking at his watch upside down. It's like maybe somebody, ooh, okay, I'm getting all types of downloads. Slow down, spirit. Somebody thought that either they thought that something they did a long time ago, or maybe in another, like before they got saved, or before they so-called, became an honest man or whatever, like some shit that they did before was forgotten, or it was forgiven, more so forgiven than forgotten, because they had changed their ways, or at least put on a different facade. Because I'm not getting that somebody changed their ways, but maybe they did. Maybe somebody, found themselves some type of in some type of devotion to a religious practice, or a righteous, so-called righteous way of life, or they just could, contain themselves to some type of moral structure comparative to what they used to do or things that they have done, so they felt like that should ultimately cover them from any misgivings of the past. But it's given that somebody is about to be surprised with exactly how much it was not forgotten, and what they still have to answer for, that maybe they just never did. They left it undone, instead of actually what's the right word, atoning. They just kind of pushed it to the back of their mind, or left it to the past, or some, back of the closet, a skeleton in the back of the closet type of thing. But it's like, no, it wasn't forgotten about, and it still has to be answered for. And it's like at the most inopportune time, maybe in someone's mature life, or at a time when they have reached a certain prominence, is when all of this shit is about to come out, or come up or affect them. And that's the surprise. It's not only a surprise to them, and this is what I was getting, is like somebody is unsure. They might not even at first be able to connect the dots to what happened. Like, why is this happening? They might be so far into this evolved persona of themselves, or at least the presentation, the facade, the persona that they project, that they might have forgotten. Like they might have drank their own Kool-Aid at this point and don't even remember, like, oh shit, I did do such and such, or I did such and such and such. They might not even be able to connect the dots. Something happened so long ago at such a time when, they really considered themselves to be a different person. But it still must be accounted for, is what I'm getting. And with the rich guy falling in reverse, it's also on the floor at that, is given to me like it's something that they didn't or they're not going to see coming. And then again, of course, the emphasis on not knowing where it's coming from or why. And they also have no idea the extent of the effects that they are about to incur. House. Oh Lord, not somebody's house. Somebody about to lose their house. Let me see what's up with this house. It's definitely, it could even be like somebody's establishments, because it's giving me Four of Wands energy. So it might be physical home, or it just might be how someone has made themselves comfortable or feel at home, even within themselves, that might be about to be disrupted. Let's see, what about the house? Jealousy and envy. Okay. Some maybe how someone so maybe someone used to be an envious person and they kind of like, you know, change their ways or at least try to or at least put on. I keep getting that it's not the reason why someone is facing some type of consequences or something is because they've done a good job at presenting themselves to be evolved, to be changed, to be like well put together, to be upstanding and all of that. But I'm not sold that it's actually authentic at the core. Like I said, maybe someone has drank the Kool-Aid. They've learned how to put in, they've learned how to invoke the practice of a moral, upstanding person, but at their core being, they're not. So maybe they put some things away, or they again have been able to elevate themselves in a public sense or in a way, you know, where it's publicly perceived to be evolved from certain pitfalls or lower frequencies. But the holistic healing is what is void here. And that's the reason, though, that's the dot that needs to be connected, is that someone's learned how to play the game and put on a good face. But at the core of them, they're still their character is still faulty, or the spirit is still uh like not tainted, but it's impure, you know. Like some, you can wear the robes, you can talk the talk, you can even walk the walk, you could find yourself in church every Sunday, you could find yourself doing some type of spiritual practice religiously, and still at your core, your heart, your spirit, your soul be damaged or bruised, or I don't know what the word is that I'm trying to, insecure, because we know that's where jealousy and envy comes from. There has to be some deep insecurity there that someone's learned how to dress up or to distract from, even maybe even distract themselves, but they really needed to be doing them love spells on their damn self. If nothing else. Let's see. Soulmate in the struggle. Yeah, like somebody struggled with making with making the most you know, like with really making like the most prominent choices for them, for their lives, and maybe even to choose themselves, to see beyond their own insecurity. Like this is given, and this, you know, it does kind of connect to the message that I posted or will post before this one, where I talked a lot about how, you know, you're being observed for your glow up or your how you've evolved remarkably. And there are some that are just curious, some that want to know how you did it so they can do something similar for themselves. And then there are some that may just be hating, you know, or want to find a way to exploit what you've done or what you are willing to share, either to hurt you or disenfranchise you or to take some type of shortcut for themselves. And this is given like somebody looking upon energies that are remarkable, you know, that have done a certain thing that they feel inadequate to do, or live life in a certain way that they feel restricted to do. And it does invoke a spirit of jealousy and envy, again, because this is someone that has not allowed themselves the freedom and the liberty to explore who they really are. And with that ultimately comes a healing, an invitation for healing that you can accept or decline. But when you truly do some soul searching and internal excavating of self, not just putting a band-aid on who you are, or putting a mask on or a costume or a cloak or whatever, ultimately it comes, it leads to an opportunity to choose to be whole in the most divine sense of the word, where it doesn't matter what anybody else, I said this in the other message too, like it doesn't matter how you're perceived, received, rejected, condemned, criticized. Nothing else matters outside of you, because this is why people put on airs a lot of times, especially in this case. Either they're wanting to mask and cloak who they really are, because they want to keep being that person behind the scenes and behind the veil, in the shadows, or they're too afraid that if they were to explore much of who they feel drawn to be, that they would be condemned for it. And ultimately, they wouldn't be able to handle that either. So people find themselves like prisoners of the masks that they wear, which ultimately does lead to like a corroding of the spirit from the inside out, because it's not authentic, it's not original, it's not true, so then it does I know I say ultimately a lot, but it does eventually play out in ways that are let's say unproductive, to say the very least, whether it's against the self of the projector, or and usually and or against others, where that jealous and envy becomes an energy that is projected outside of self, because it's hard to contain it. And before you know it, you start doing things and acting out in ways that are not holistically productive and prosperous. And here it is, find your way into spaces that do have heavy consequences and repercussions, even when you have disconnected or detached from it. The spirit of the man that would do that, or that wanted to do that, or wishes they could do that, still exists until you confront it, and at some point, hopefully, embrace it. So this quite honestly could even be someone that struggled with the concept of conventional religious practices, and what's the word, like organized religious practices that are, conventionally accepted, approved, versus either their intrigue or interest in something more mystical or spiritual, that is not so conventional, not so traditional, maybe totally contrary to where they feel most comfortable presenting themselves, or where they feel most comfortable existing, I'll say. And that inner conflict is not solved on its own. Like I said, it becomes a corrosion of the spirit, that whatever, it becomes such a corrosion that whatever you establish upon that foundation is faulty, because it's not secure. The person is not secure. And instead of finding your own security with your own, in your own point of discovery, this is usually the type of energy that would project criticism, condemnation, or some adverse energy outward, instead of looking within. Oh boy, this is draining. All right, what's next? I'm gonna keep going a little bit. It's like you see people living their best life liberally with no care in the world, and instead of And that happens a lot. I do believe like people hide behind their doctrine to condemn others that they're really just jealous of. You know, that they're jealous of how free you are, how and free, you know, people could very well be on their way to hell. It's not your place to judge whether they are or aren't, but it be the jealousy of the audacity and the sheer liberation to follow your path anyway. Discover who you are, live out loud, not care who's watching, not care who has something to say, not care about the gossip or the talk of the town or what the saints going to say if you do this or if you miss a Sunday or if you decide to take a leave from church or a leave from whatever, you know what I mean? Like type stuff like that where people be prisoners of their own masks and they want to get out. They want to be free, but they don't have the slightest clue or, you know, the least bit of courage to actually do so. They got all the authority in the world and all the, you know, the power within their own possession to do so, but they rather stay confined to where they are because it's safe and condemn anyone that has the courage or the boldness to do anything else. That's that. Opposition. Yeah. Wishing ill will, like I said, they going to hell. That's witchcraft. Them tarot cards, them crystals, them candles, them da 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 da. What is like, and what are you going to hell for? Because last I checked, words were spells. So if you're hurling word curses towards someone or wishing for their downfall, they gonna learn, they gonna find out the hard way, that everything's gonna, all the stuff that people will say in the name of their God or in the name of their own beliefs and their own convictions are taken for granted to be quite contrary, quite oppositional to what they preach and what they say they believe, you know. So, and that could be the thing. Here it is, back to that surprise element where some people might actually be quite shocked. And this is connected to my last message too. Thank you, Spirit. Some people might be quite shocked to see how some are thriving and evolving, elevating, ascending, prospering in quite an abundant life that were pegged to be, you know, that are ultimately pegged to be unworthy. And then on account of that, seeing people thrive that you feel like, seeing the spiritual community thrive when you feel like that's a demonic realm. The only thing for someone that is rife with religious, legalistic perspective, let's say, is to believe, is to demonize the whole project demonization over the whole thing. Like, yeah, well, they thriving now, but they ain't gonna be for long, or they got that by demonic means, or that's not gonna prosper, or that's the devil's work, or yeah, the devil will reward you. Like, people are going to really be mad and bothered and surprised at who and what they're seeing is being exalted in this era, and how it conflicts with their personal convictions and how it irritates their unresolved spirit in the matter. Because the only justification for the masks and the cloaks and daggers that some have held on to has been the inflated feeling of righteousness over all over other things, over all else. In some cases, I ain't naming no names, but we know how it go. I ain't naming no religions, I should say, but we know how it go. Where you feel like you are the superior practice, and anything less than or that doesn't acknowledge what you acknowledge or speak how you speak is condemned or damned, even worse. Some people are going to be quite surprised to witness what the divine is exalting, so much so that they're not going to want to believe it. They're going to call it everything but a child of God. Call those that are being exalted everything but a child of God. And unfortunately, this is also connected to my last message, because they'll be so obstinate and resistant to the truth of the matter that their eyes are showing them, but that their spirits are not willing to accept. They may miss out on opportunities to have that experience for themselves. Some are actually going to condemn themselves to an unfulfilled life out of fear that if they step out of those confines, out of that box, look how that house looks like a box. 2:35 on the clock, that's 5:5. So fearful of change and to bringing endings to things that just don't make sense anymore, that have proven not to align with the truth of their identity, that they're going to miss out. They're going to miss a moment to ascend, to evolve, to enhance the quality of their life. And ultimately that will corrode more on the insides of that man or woman that refuses to be open and to their own personal discovery, because that fear is just going to compound and that resentment is going to compound. And in this era, in this realm of existence, that's going to be the death of some. And if not physical death, it's just going to be a life of grave unfulfillment. Because where you could finesse fulfillment before and even capitalize on the practicality of certain ways of belief or ideals, even practices, there's no avenue for revenue, and not just in a material sense, but just generally speaking, it's not prosperous anymore. It's not prosperous. The reason why you see a lot of churches in stress to keep their doors open, to keep members coming in, to keep people believing and investing in the entity of the church. And I'm not speaking against it, because I think that there are a lot of great churches out there that are doing really doing God's work. There are also a lot of institutions that have been void and hollow for a very long time, whether they've known it or not, or whether they've been quite aware and still persist on. People that have been quite hollow to even what they're preaching anymore, but they continue on because, like I said, it's safe, it's secure, it's the sure way to heaven. So you think, or at least heaven on earth, where you can present yourself to be upright and righteous and have others celebrate you for that. That's what I was getting with Love Spell a minute ago, where people are glamoring others by the personas that they're projecting to garner acceptance, to attract agreement, and things of that nature, let alone the actual monetary or material return for those efforts at a time. But it's just not that anymore. And a lot of folks are going to be shocked. Some already are shocked, as to why they'll say, people are just demonic now, or souls are just lost, and so on and so forth. But it's really just the tides changing to exalt truth in its rawest form, without the additives, without the extractions, without the what do you call it, like the fillers and even the poison. It's just what it truly is, and that's so personal and individual that it's hard for an institution that's confined by the conditionings of its gatekeepers, because the institution itself doesn't have it can thrive, it can evolve, but it's the gatekeepers, the housekeepers, so to speak, that don't have the courage to evolve, that keep the institution confined, literally like a jailhouse as opposed to a house of healing or a house of prayer, or anything like that. A true sanctuary, which doesn't even have to be confined to the building itself, but it's just the spirit of inclusion and welcome that is usually the foundation of every religious practice, more or less. That acceptance and grace, that is established. Every religious practice that's established is usually founded on those principles. And it's the people that exploit them, that corrode them and corrupt them. That was the word I was trying to look for. Corruption. Yeah. All right. So we got divine masculine here. Next to opposition, but like again under this priest energy, like I said, it's given, I don't know, it's either given someone again that's presenting themselves to be this ideal man or woman, either way, but they really aren't at heart. They're quite contrary to what they're projecting, or this is a nod to the evolution and ascension itself. That people need to be less focused on titles and accolades and roles and robes and positions and hierarchies and power, meaningless power with no authority at that, and more thoughtful about like the spirit of the man or woman, masculine or feminine. Like truly this divine masculine is the spirit of the man that is prioritized, not the position of the man or the persona of the man, the perception of the man. The divine masculine is who he is when nobody's looking or when everybody's looking. Also a part of that last message as well, where some folks are getting ready to be kind of thrust into the spotlight. Maybe it's a small spotlight just in your waking life, or maybe it's on a massive scale, like publicly, or what's the word, popularly, socially, whatever. And it's going to be a bit of a transition and an adjustment for many, that, like I said, you was doing you when nobody was watching anyway. It wasn't about the position or the robes or the accolades or the applause or the amens or the hallelujahs and none of that. If you never got none of that, you were still going to be doing you. That's the level of courage and boldness that's being elevated and exalted, promoted, literally promoted in position of power and authority, but also that the divine is looking to like market, as an ideal, not the facade of righteousness, but the reality of it, truly from the inside out. And that's your shadow and your light. It's not tucking the shadow and the skeletons away and letting them play when nobody's looking. But when you step out into the world, oh, you are a man of valor or a woman of honor, you know. It's time's up for that. It's time's up for that. Ooh, rich girl, and it was a bit of a struggle, but it's still more upright than anything. And I love that right under the rich guy, that's definitely a change of the guard from that patriarchal mentality to a more matriarchal one. And again, not limited to feminine or masculine energy, like that just being universally what's being exalted. Something that's more soft, more graceful, more intuitive, insightful. What's more words? More fertile, you know, less aggressive, less dominating, all of that stuff. And not to say that the masculine aspect or the patriarchy is all bad, it's not, but like I've said in readings before, it's just been too much of that. So there needs to be a rebalancing. Just like it's been too much of the indoctrination, not just in a religious sense, but of a lot of practices and ideals that are not holistically advancing for humanity and for the divine agenda. It's been too much of that, and too many have prospered on account of it, and too many have been disenfranchised as a result of it. It's time to balance it out. That's it. It's just that simple. It's just the universal way. The law of the land. Entity attachment. Damn. Under house. That's why I said, like, the way that what someone has established as, I don't think I've ever seen this card. It's quite disturbing. What someone has established as a foundation is shoddy, to say the absolute least. There's some what's the word, like lower vibrational spirits attached to, well, roaming, haunting. Here it is, haunting that establishment, whether this be someone's vessel, someone's mind, someone's actual home. Again, their lifestyle is plagued by lower frequencies that are not sustainable in this era, that are not productive, that are not fertile, that don't allow for prosperity in the most abundant sense. It would be a very limited way that these entities would be satisfied, and that would ultimately limit those that are in alignment, not just with the entities themselves, but with whatever the establishment is, which is wrecked with the entities. The entity could even just be something like jealousy and envy, insecurity, fear, pain, in the most primitive sense. What else? Lust, pride. Yeah, those could be the attachments that someone has built their house upon. They established a foundation upon, and it's hard to release those things now, because then it's you more or less admitting that at least some aspect of who you presented yourself to be, or what you presented for public consumption or perspective or whatever, was not completely authentic. And for some people, that's a hard reality to adjust to. Some people can't take the whispers. They can't take the gossip, the word on the street, the side eyes, the condemnation, the whispers, the girl, did you hear about so and so? Or girl, you know what happened to so and so? Or some people can't take that. It literally does something to, well, it's because if when you can't take that, it's because the esteem that you established for yourself was faulty in the first place. It wasn't built on anything secure, really and truly. It was just the facade of security, like a house that has no studs, you know what I mean, or something like that, where you just put up all these bricks or sheetrock or whatever the case may be, but there's nothing that's really holding that structure in place. There's nothing giving it structure on the inside. One blow by the big bad wolf and that thing's coming down. One bad word, bad rap, again, gossip around town, and you would be mortified because the way that you have presented yourself is not being well received or believed by those that you would want to believe so. And it's really for your own personal gratification of security, to be accepted and not to be shunned. But again, does it matter that people accept you, understand you, appreciate you, or that you do so for yourself? And more importantly, that the divine knows who you are and is pleased with who you are at your core. That's really what matters. But we made each other judge and jury. All right, 2 more and I'm out. Mature man. Here we go. Damn. But under jealous and envy and after entity attachment, this is either somebody taking many years to finally come to the truth of themselves, to finally feel comfortable with who they are from the inside out. Or this could be somebody, like I said, that's still carrying on, which, sometimes, like they say, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I don't believe that's true. However, it must be a challenge because a lot of the habits and behaviors, that I have, and I'm not even that old, are hard to break. But when you get to a certain point to be called mature, and there's a certain way a life that you're just accustomed to and most comfortable with, a certain indoctrination that has been the truth of your existence for so long, it's hard to entertain anything else. And your disdain for others that are open enough to do so can easily become an attachment of sorts that, will just keep you stuck in place the more and more that you feed into it. Until you could be an old man and before you would finally be willing to see life through a different lens. And the divine ain't really going to push you to do it. I mean, your circumstances, your reality will be encouraging and inviting. But if you're dead set on, being right as opposed to being righteous in your own regard, they'll let you have it. They'll let you have it. It is what it is. All right, so let me get one more. So I got to give to the virtual TMI. That's too much. Please help poverty. Oh no. And ice king. Yeah, like stuck in your ways. No, thinking you know it all. That's giving King of Swords vibes. Yeah, like you got it all figured out. And then here's the nice guy. What they say, the nice guy finishes last. So like I said, it could take somebody a whole lifetime to get to the truth of their identity and the truth of life as they discover it. But if they get there, beautiful. The time won't even matter. But if they never do, and they just sit around and watch everybody else, like I said before, like having to observe others prosper in ways that you don't agree with, or you don't feel comfortable exploring or entertaining, or that you've been taught is wrong, or whatever, it'll be a very excruciating life experience to lead. Yeah. So, I don't know. Unfulfilling and irritating to watch the nice guy finish in the most aligned way with the universe and in the most aligned way with themselves, especially when you felt like, consider what I said, nice guys finish last. That's like a doctrine, like, or an ideal, which is not necessarily true, but it's something commonly said. So when you've always felt like there was an unworthiness attached to the so-called nice guy, or to a certain type of man or woman, or people that believe a certain type of way, you're going to be shocked and thrown completely off to witness that myth be dispelled right before your eyes. And at that point, you only have the choice, the soulmate energy, which is given twin flame, which it might be one in here, but that's what it's giving me at this time. Where you'll only have the choice to go into that exploration of self for, on your own, by your own merit and at your own discretion, or to continue to condemn what you refuse to accept. There's not much in between those two, honestly, especially when you're having an unsatisfying experience of your own. Maybe nobody else knows it, but and you're observing others doing things and being ways that you thought was sure to get them a one-way ticket to hell or to some unsavory reality of life. What do you do with that information? It's up to the individual, but I feel like a lot of people are going to be faced with that confrontation of truth in this lifetime, if they haven't been already. Because there's been a lot of people that have been counted out, left for dead, discarded, deemed as unworthy, deemed as demonic, unrighteous, so on and so forth, or even just generally, conventionally speaking, if you don't practice what I practice religiously, you're going to hell. Or if you don't believe what I believe politically, you ain't shit. Or you know what I mean? Like all of those things, politically, socially, economically, all the differences that we encounter are projections, are mirrors to us about what we're truly experiencing in our lives. And if you're living a life that you feel fulfilled by, you're really not too provoked to try to tell other people that they're doing something wrong. Like I was saying in the previous message, it's like if you can add value by sharing your testimony, cool, so be it. But you also stay detached from what people actually do with that. Like you can't force a homeless person that you gave money to actually buy food once you decide to give them money. You just have to release that charity and pray that it'll be used productively, but it's no longer your concern. So it's something about that here where it's like those that are truly content with who they are, the life that they're living, the identity that they've curated, the truth of their well being, don't have a lot of time and energy to condemn others, to criticize others, to put others down. Now, you may have an opinion on by way of your observation, but you don't have time to put energy behind, especially projecting anything contrary or intrusive toward anyone else. All you can, if anything, that's a strong indicator that you get to take personal inventory of why you may or may not be so bothered and figure out if there's an adjustment that can be made in your own life to change that feeling. That's it. That's where the buck stops. Surprise is not back here on this bottom. Are you for real? That's crazy. Now, y'all know I've been shuffling these cards whole time. Surprise is where we started. Surprise is where we ended. Third party sitch. And there it is. It's like the peanut gallery. The peanut gallery. Everybody's got an opinion. Everybody's got a perspective. But like I just said, if anything, it's a projection of your own reflection. Like, why do you feel that way? Why do you feel entitled or incited to project energy toward others, whether it be by opinion or condemnation or whatever the case may be? Like, what is that reflecting back to you? And more importantly, it just goes back to the point of, with this surprise element, that folks are really about to be astounded by, if they had something to say before, they gonna really be astounded by what they see happening now, and by the way that life is changing before our eyes, like supernaturally. Things that used to be condemned may be becoming a natural way of life. And that's going to be surprising for folks to perceive with their very own eyes and to accept, but look, everybody who's going to have an opportunity to make that choice for themselves. So, but anyway, like I said in the very beginning, there's some surprises in order. And connected to the last message, I think, if you're on the upswing of this energy, people are going to be quite surprised, maybe by who you reintroduce yourself to be, or the identity that you present, which has been evolved or has ascended from what they may have known previously. And also the return and reward on that comes along with that projection is going to be astounding, in a way where people they may be talking, they may be reaching out, they may be asking questions, they may be making comments, they may be making criticisms, they may be projecting doubts, they may be hurling insults. It really doesn't matter. As long as you are living in your truth and you are in alignment with your most supreme self and supreme source, they can keep on talking and keep on watching and keep on waiting for something to miraculously change in their lives that they're not willing to actually create for themselves. Or they can keep on praying in the courage and the boldness to satisfy their curiosities at the core and actually have an elevated experience for themselves. There's always a range of choices. All right, so I'm going to leave that there. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Until next time, as always, I'll leave you with peace.